Leo dating the young gals. Normal or creepy?
This is kind of his thing. Like, this is what Leo's known for. It's what he likes to do. So who am I to tell him, no, go for the old people?
Well, you're a reasonable young woman who understands virtue and the moral order. So that's who you are to tell him what to do. Returning to the Michael Knowles Show, expert love panel, we have Lauren Smolka, who lives in LA, former Miss Hollywood, competed in both the Miss America and Miss USA organizations. Lauren is our millennial correspondent. Lauren, thank you for coming on the show.
Of course. Thank you for having me back.
We have again Deborah Leah, a viral conservative content creator from New York City and a recent graduate of the University of Maryland. Deborah, you are our Gen Z correspondent. We have Billy Ray Brandt, new to the panel, an expert dating coach and viral content creator from New Jersey. Speaking of love and romance, the state in which I was conceived. Billy Ray's TikTok has over 400,000 followers. She's also very popular on YouTube and Instagram. Another Zoomer. Thank you, ladies, for coming to the show.
Thank you.
I want to go down the line. We'll start with our senior expert correspondent, Lauren, and we'll just take it one by one. Leo dating the young gals. Normal or creepy?
You know, it's hard to say because, look when Demi Moore dates a younger guy. It's a bit of a double standard that we have here. And specifically, though, it is more common with men. So that is a good question to bring up, but important to also note, why do we think that it's only creepy when the man is older? In this specific circumstance, I think, it's the tale that we all hear. Women go towards an older man sometimes because men do mature at not as fast as a rate as women. So I think that is why we see this pattern kind of a bit.
I've been hearing this kind of anti-male rhetoric since I was 11 years old. Oh, women mature much faster than men. It's obviously true, but it still hurts, nevertheless, to hear it. Deborah, normal or creepy?
I'm in the middle. I'm come from a Jewish community, so it's not unfamiliar for me for people to get married to people a lot older. My grandparents are 10 years apart. But I do think that this is representative of a larger phenomenon in society where if people are no longer pursuing marriages to have children, why does it matter what age you date? Why don't you just go for the youngest, hottest thing fresh off the shelf? So I think that this is something larger in society, but also this is kind of his thing. Like, this is what Leo is known for. It's what he likes to do. So who am I to tell him, no, go for the old people?
Well, you're a reasonable young woman who understands virtue and the moral order. So that's who you are to tell him what to do. But actually, the middle of the road response you just gave, I rescind my eye roll because you made two very good points, which is that a lot of us have grandparents that have an age gap and they have a great marriage and that's totally fine. But also, that's not what Leo is doing here. It's not like Leo is finding some younger woman and having a wife and having lots of children. He's just kind of going out and doing that thing that only married people are supposed to do and then moving on. And then to your point, if that's it, if this is a totally sterile relationship, emotionally, spiritually, and biologically, then who cares what age they are, right? It's all just about feeling good and titillating us for a brief period of time. Billy Ray, what do you say?
I don't think it's necessarily wrong what he's doing. If he was my dating client, I definitely wouldn't recommend it. I think it is representative of, male-female dynamics in our society. I think as a man, he's looking for purity, the ability to lead in a relationship. And I think a woman is looking for, the older man that's more established in life. But I think at the end of the day, this is a constant cycle that he finds himself in. And a cycle that he will never really be fulfilled in. I personally believe in traditional values. I believe in the nuclear family. I think you find real fulfillment in monogamy and having a family, and he's doing himself a disservice by not partaking in that.
I agree. So then what's your advice to Leo? How does he break out of this cycle? Because I see it. I try to put myself in his shoes. Let's say I'm Leo DiCaprio. I've been a famous Hollywood star since I was like 12, and I'm very good looking, and I'm super duper rich. And I know that it's definitely very fun to do whatever he does on the yacht with these 21-year-old girls. So how do you convince yourself to put that titillating pleasure aside and actually restrain some of your immediate pleasure for something that is in the long term much more satisfying? What would you tell him if he were your client?
To go after a different type. He has the wrong type. I don't think he just doesn't seem to be on the right track. Like I said, it's a constant cycle. He's going out with the same exact woman every time, just a younger one. Once she ages out, he goes for the younger one. So I would say to find somebody closer to his age, start looking to values rather than just pleasure.
But the problem for a lot of these guys, I think, is that their value is pleasure. The thing that they most value is just going out and having fun and feeling good. And so that's one of the problems of our modern society, is that the highest moral maxim is, if it feels good, do it. Deborah, you had said that, look, if he likes it, if that's his thing, who am I to judge? But hasn't that thinking gotten us down this crazy social rabbit hole to begin with?
Yes, I am definitely not taking the libertarian stance on here. If I had the choice to break it up, why not use a little bit of power? But from a more freedom perspective, I just don't have a horrible problem with people exercising things that aren't illegal. If she was underage, I'd be riding at dawn to free that girl. But I definitely think that this is, in society, especially modern society, men and women, but especially young men, are kind of enabled to pursue one of two things. And this is the same throughout all of history. It's either fulfillment or pleasure. And the relationships that he's seeking are purely pleasure-based. There's obviously not going to be fulfillment. If these people are decades younger than you, they probably don't share the same values. I know that my values at 19 are completely different than they are at 22 years old. And I can't even imagine what they're going to be like when I'm 30 or 40 or nearing Leo's age around 50. So I think we need to encourage young men to start pursuing, and women, just fulfilling relationships rather than just Tinder, Hinge, swiping on all these apps, getting a little bit of a dopamine hit on a random Tuesday night. This is not helping anybody in society, but it's also nothing new. Like, he's not groundbreaking, this idea of just dropping off. He clearly doesn't want a family. So men pursuing pleasure is a tale as old as time.
Right. It's not a breaking news story, dog bites man or man bites dog, that a rich, famous, hot guy is having sex with lots of young women. That's fairly normal. But what about this as a social trend? If you can, feel free to refrain from answering the question if you like, but would you guys do it? Like, have any of you had the impulse to date an older man? If Leo DiCaprio came knocking on the door, I assume every girl would say, okay, great. Or no? I mean, how would you feel about it personally, Lauren?
Well, I was actually telling a friend yesterday that a couple years ago, I had gone on a couple dates with a guy, and I didn't find out his age until, I believe it was like the second or third date. And he was significantly older than me. And so when I say, like, I understand why certain women date older men for maturity purposes, this was the extreme, to where I wouldn't date someone who was of the age that he was. But I think what we run into, especially living in Los Angeles, and Deborah might run into this as well, living in New York City, I feel like so many guys have what's called Peter Pan syndrome. And I've definitely dated some, and they just don't want to grow up. They don't want to commit. And I feel like women always have this natural maternal instinct for not only finding a spouse, but for finding a family. And I don't think women really grow out of that. We might go through phases, but I feel like men don't really even desire that until later. And so that's why we run into this issue quite a bit.
Do you think that there are age mismatches just generally in dating? I say this because some of my friends who didn't get married when they were 25, they found that as they got into their 30s, or maybe toward their late 30s, all of a sudden the dating pool looked totally different. And so, I mean, the only thing I can think of is, if you're a freshman in high school, you're a freshman in college, you notice that the girls want to date the upperclassmen. That's the only way I can think about it, because I've been dating my high school sweetheart, and then we got married. And so I think, okay, well, now there's this real problem for the freshman guy, because the freshman girls and the sophomore girls and the junior girls and the senior girls all want to date the junior and senior guys. So what's the freshman guy going to do? Is there a similar thing at play for the guys who are, 22 to 25. They're not really anywhere in their career. They don't really have any money. They're not all that impressive. And then the older guy, maybe he's not a super rich, hot, famous movie star like Leo DiCaprio, but he's more impressive than the younger guy. He can just swoop in and scoop up all the 22 to 26-year-old girls.
Yeah, this is a phenomenon that I had discussed with somebody else before this panel, ironically. It's like you're listening into my conversations or something.
Well, yeah, I work for the NSA and the FBI, and so we're all, there's a lot of surveillance going on in the country.
I just won $100 betting you were a Fed. No, I'm kidding. But this is something that I think is just common in society, especially in the older age group, like men from, I'd say like 24 to around at least 28. At least the men that I know are very focused on a career because they want to be providers eventually. And I think it stresses them out to date while they're also working on building their income, building a life that they can provide and create space for a wife to come in and protect the children and her and everything. So in that time, women, I'm 22, I know that the 25-year-olds, they're keeping their heads down. They're going to their investment banking jobs, working 120 hours a week. They don't have any time for girls. So by the time comes around where they feel comfortable to start dating and exploring monogamous relationships, they're like 29. And why would they not go for the youngest, hottest thing? Like, this is just a cycle that we find ourselves in. And I don't think women have any problem with it, because what woman is going to turn down a man who's completely able to provide for her and say, you know what, I'd rather struggle for a few years. So maybe that this is just something that, as marriage rates go up, like people are older when they're getting married now than they were in the past. I think that's causing more a divide, because if we're getting married at 16 years old or 18 years old, nobody's had time to build up $10 million. But now if we're waiting till we're 24, oh, maybe I'll wait till I'm 26 and I could find a man who will buy me an even bigger house and make me a Range Rover mom even sooner, pay for Pilates. So I think maybe getting married younger would mitigate this problem, but I don't think it's going away anytime soon, honestly.
Deborah, I love that for you, the example of the low status guy who is an investment banker in New York. I love it's like, yeah, those investment bankers, no, these poor guys, they're just hustling.
They got no time.
That's true.
They're slaves to their bosses. People want to say that women submit to their bosses. You should see an investment banker. They say jump. They say, okay, how high? How high?
That is true. I don't mean to beat up on the investment bankers. Some of my best friends are investment bankers. Now, Billy Ray, what would you say to women and men in this situation? Because one of my regrets, it's only a quasi regret because I trust in Providence and I think everything is happening in a way that is beautiful and the outflowing of God's grace. And so, I'm not complaining, is what I'm saying. But a quasi regret I have is I wish I had gotten married sooner. I wish sweet little Elisa and I had started having kids sooner. Then we could have, I don't know, 12 of them, 24 of them, see how fast we could go. What is your advice to young men who are finding themselves in this little bit of a crunch where the girls their age are looking at the older guys who are a little bit more established and they find themselves maybe a little left behind?
So this is something I talk about a lot, kind of the war on masculinity. I think the problem is women's standards are too high, and also men are kind of following the social constructs that women are setting for men. So what I mean by that is a lot of men are kind of like feminizing their tendencies today to try to like appease women and fit their expectations, when in reality, they're not really appealing to women at this point. I don't think they realize that there's this extreme disconnect, but we're all creating it. We're all a part of the problem.
And we need to be part of the solution. And that's not just Leo DiCaprio. That's me and you. That's Michael Jackson saying, I'm going to look at the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. Ladies, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you? We'll go down the line. Lauren?
Lauren Smolka on Instagram.
Deborah?
The Deborah Leia on Instagram as well.
Billy Ray?
Billy Ray Brandt on everything.
You can find me on MySpace at Italian Stallion 318. You can find me on LiveJournal at Cool Guy 127. You can find me on Zanga. You can find me on AOL Instant Messenger. Thank you all for coming on. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. We'll see you next time.